So let's go to the. I'd like to talk a little bit about the difference between the different hats you wear between street art, commercial art, and fine art. And we have a gallery show of your work here at the Halsey. And by the way, these are just random selections from Shepard's past. These are not intended to be illustrative of what we're talking about at the moment. I guess you figured that out. But we're showing your fine art work in the gallery, which has its own kind of experience of, it's beautifully realized. It has a certain power and beauty in terms of the application of paint, and you really see what the artist is doing, whereas so much of your work is seen from such a distance that you really don't see the hand of the artist in it so much. It could be, right. It could be a sticker, it could be machine made because it's so beautifully precise. But in your gallery work, you actually see the brush strokes and the actual work that goes into creating those works. And then for commercial work, obviously you're working in a realm where the things are going to be translated into another, either print or some kind of media. Mm-hmm. So I wonder if you could talk a little about those three genres that you work in.
Sure. Well, when I went to the Rhode Island School of Design, I studied illustration just because it was the most open-ended major. You could take a lot of electives, and I really didn't know what I wanted to do career-wise, but graphic art had always appealed to me from the time that I got into skateboarding and punk rock. All the skateboards, t-shirts, all of those things were made with screen printing, which is, you know, a technique that means that the more colors you add, the more difficult it is, the more expensive it is, the more work goes into it. So to make things cost-effective and efficient, a lot of it used a minimal color palette and was, you know, driven by graphic power but simplicity. Even Warhol, I think, Jasper Johns, Rauschenberg, there's a Lichtenstein, there's a graphic sensibility to what they do. Barbara Kruger, absolutely. She pulls her aesthetic from advertising. So I always liked things that were, you know, mass-produced. I liked record covers. I liked stickers, posters, and of course I love great painting. But first of all, I didn't think that I was skilled enough to ever make it as a fine artist. Even though I worked hard at drawing and painting, I saw many, many people at the Rhode Island School of Design who were so much more gifted as painters or illustrators. And I decided that for all the different things I was interested in, that screen printing was a great way to synthesize a lot of the techniques that appealed to me, whether I was mixing collage, my own photography, a bit of illustration. I could pull all those things together and end up with a cohesive result by screen printing it. After I graduated from school, I decided that if I wanted to keep screen printing, I had to have a screen printing business. So I did that for a living, but that really was a very, very difficult business. And when a friend said, "Do you want to move to California and work with me? I'm doing some graphic design, I'm doing some clothing design. You can manage the production for my clothing company and we can work on some graphics together." I did that, and I learned how to use the computer. And learning how to use the computer meant that illustrations that I did, I could scan in and experiment with, rather than having one precious original that I might ruin with the next move. Once it's in the computer, I can Command-Z back a few steps if I didn't like what I did. It was really a great tool to make my work process as a illustrator and designer more efficient, and to make me a little bit more courageous. So I started to make a living as a graphic designer, but all the while printing my own posters at night and on weekends and going out and doing street art. I never thought that any of that would lead to gallery shows, but fortunately, there happened to be a move in New York City, and with a few people who, there's a gallery called the Alleged Gallery, Lower East Side, and they were showing people who came out of skateboarding, out of music culture, out of street culture, and I was asked to be in a show there. Then I was asked to be in a show in the Cooper Hewitt, which was Smithsonian's Design Museum, and at the New Museum. And these things demonstrated to me that what I was doing that I just thought was street art or graphic art, was strong enough to be embraced by these pretty legitimate places, and that made me want to try harder. And then I saw an artist named Barry McGee, Twist, who was a graffiti artist, doing a show first at the Drawing Center in New York and then at Deitch Projects. And he was translating the energy of what he did on the street into these very, very ambitious, sophisticated, layered installations that had all the energy of the street work, but were just presented beautifully in what would normally be a somewhat sterile environment. And that made me want to figure out a way to do what I was doing to make it translate to a gallery setting as well. I think because I'd loved to make drawings and paintings in high school and in college, the idea of figuring out a way to make works that were beautiful objects, not just something that was a print that would stand up next to an advertisement, which is pretty easy, but something that would work on a white wall, that appealed to me, but it wasn't the only thing I cared about. So to fund my street work and my fine art, I continue to work as a graphic designer, and even though I don't have to work as a graphic designer now financially, I still do, because every now and then a project comes my way that is a great platform to reach an audience that I might not be reaching, whether it's Led Zeppelin's album cover or things for any Black Sabbath's tour poster, that I'm a huge fan of those bands, and then I know that they have a massive audience and my work will be in front of their audience. So the cross-pollination potential is amazing. And to be paid for those projects that I would do free, I'd probably pay to do them, it's phenomenal. And art and commerce might not always be easy to make symbiotic, but when you can do it, I think it's an opportunity that has to be seized.